There's always been a notion that product organizations can conduct a controlled rollout of things. Teams can test the product or features and then eventually roll them out to everyone, what is known as generally available, or GA. The general idea is to put an early version of the product or a feature out in advance to a limited set of users as a way to collect feedback, iterate, and then decide when it will be ready to roll out to the entire customer base. In some edge cases, products might even stay in a beta release for years. Google's beta version of Gmail, for example, launched in 2004, but it remained in beta until 2009, when the GA version was officially released. In other words, today it's rare to release something that hasn't been used by early users. Product features essentially begin as experiments. Teams roll out variations to user segments or sample groups, and then measure the impact against product metrics. As features are refined, teams progressively roll them out to larger and larger groups of users who are then notified of updates and educated on new functionality. This is especially valuable for larger, more traditional businesses that have millions of customers, some of which are paying millions of dollars for the product. They don't want to disrupt users' experience for the sake of experimentation, so it's particularly useful to target small subsets of users as they release and improve new functionality and then build out to the entire user base. Let's go over some of the different strategies you can utilize to launch products and features in this incremental, iterative fashion. First, there are feature flags or gates. This is where you can turn features on and off during a release, allowing you to roll out certain features to a limited set of customers as a way to test things on a more gradual scale. You can also think of it as a way to deploy a piece of code in production while restricting access to only a subset of users. This service is controlled dynamically outside of the code, not requiring engineering resources to make a change. One thing to note about feature flags is that they can add complications for the product team and beyond. Consider what happens if every one of your users has a different set of flags turned on. How does your support team know which flag is active when someone calls with a problem? Or how do you write documentation for your product based on multiple combination of flags that might be turned on or off? If you're utilizing feature flags, be sure to keep this top of mind. Related to feature flags, it's also effective to give your users the ability to opt into a new feature, rather than consistently adding new features to the UI and potentially disrupting their experience. Tesla is a good example of this. As a customer, you can automatically opt into using the latest and greatest software in your vehicle, or you can choose to be a slower adopter. If you want to let others test those features before you're ready, you have the option to wait. You can also leverage a pilot program in which you have a group of users try out a product or feature for a set period of time so you can collect feedback and test functionality in real-world scenarios. It's important to set a clear purpose for your pilot from the very beginning and also establish how you'll measure success with both qualitative and quantitative data. There are also 1% or 10% tests, where you test new functionality with a certain percentage of your user base. If you have a smaller user base, it might be 10%, whereas if you have a larger user base, you may only want to test 1%. Although the tactics I just walked through might not be what you think of when you think of a launch, they are critical to effective product development. Launching incrementally allows you to test ideas, gather feedback, and ultimately ensure the product or feature you eventually release to the entire user base is one that will solve their problems and deliver real value.